Last week, the title of my message was Invaluable. It was to show us that we are extremely invaluable to God. We are so valuable to Him. Why would He go through what He went through if we were not important to Him? We are so valuable to God. Today, the title's a little bit different. It's not the same message. The last week, the title was Invaluable, and this week, Welcome to Renew. Welcome back. Now, please don't take the title of this message personally. This is the title I hope that will get stuck in your mind, not a name by which I'm referring to anybody. So last week, yes, you could take that one personally. This week, it's not the opposite message. Okay, so you are not dirtbags. I promise you that's not where I'm going this morning. I would like to look at a passage this morning which caught my attention some time ago. It's always intriguing to me when I see something odd happen within a story of the Bible. Remember, we're in Western culture. This was Eastern culture that this stuff happened in. So when I see something odd that happens in the Bible, it grabs my attention. I'm intrigued by that. In 2 Kings chapter 5, we have the story of Naaman the leper. And I've spoken on his story before, but not from this angle. I want to go farther into the story this time. What God does through this story is remarkable to me. But the way that the story ends, that's what stirs up my curiosity here. It's the way this story ends. It really comes to light for me. The chapter starts out by introducing us to Naaman. So let's go right into the scripture, 2 Kings chapter 5 and verse 1. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but a leper. Naaman was pretty high up in Syrian rank. He's known. People know him. He's the commander of the Syrian army. He's just won a war that, unbeknownst to him, was given to him by God. It says that God gave Naaman the victory. He's not aware of this, but the fact that he got the victory is because God allowed him to have that victory. His master sees him as a great man. It even mentions that right there, that he's, even in the eyes of his master, he's a great and honorable man. But he has caught leprosy, and now he lives under a death sentence. There was no cure. There's no cure for this disease. He has leprosy, and he knows he's going to die. Naaman, he's an extremely blessed man. But even though he has wealth and power and respect, he's still dying. He's still dying. The fate of the rich is always the same as the fate of the poor. It's still the same fate. The fate of the healthy is still the same as the fate of the sick. No matter who we are, the fate's still the same. We all come to the end of our lives. It's what we choose to do with the time that we have while we're alive that matters. That's what matters. The ultimate outcome is determined by what we do with Christ. That's the important decision. But the fate's still the same. Whether you're extremely healthy or whether you are suffering with a sickness, whether you are really rich or whether you are really poor, the story ends the same. We all die. We all die. It's what you do with your life, especially what you do with Christ, that matters. That's what's important. Naaman had a good life. I would even venture to say that he was a pretty great guy, based on what we see in Scripture. He was very likable. This guy, people liked him. His people kidnapped a young girl from Israel. The Syrians kidnapped this young girl, this young Israelite girl, and she didn't even hate him. She works for his wife. She's a servant, a slave girl to Naaman's wife, and this girl doesn't even hate Naaman. Even though she's a slave, she wants what's best for him. Look at this verse in verse 2. And the Syrians had gone out on raids and had brought back captive a young girl from the land of Israel. She waited on Naaman's wife. Then she said to her mistress, "If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy." This servant girl only wants what's best for Naaman. She's been kidnapped, and she still likes this guy. She still wants what's best for him. She even recommends that he goes to Samaria to hear from the prophet of God. Now we are going to go ahead and fly past a lot of the details of this story to get to the verses that I want to expound on, but I do encourage you to go back and read the story. read the whole chapter of 2 Kings chapter 5. Go back and read the whole thing because there's so many great details in the story. But I want to jump forward here. Naaman is a very honored individual, but he still listens to this young servant girl. Like, okay, I'm gonna listen to your advice. He travels to Samaria to visit the prophet Elisha. And when he gets to Elisha's house, he's shocked by the way he's treated. This is Naaman, the commander of the Syrian army. This guy is not just some low guy on the totem pole. This is Naaman, the commander of the army. Look at verse 9 of 2 Kings 5. Then Naaman went with his horses and chariot, and he stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. This is how the commander of the Syrian army is addressed right here. Elisha doesn't even come out to meet him himself. He shows up at Elisha's door. He is there. And Elisha just tells the servant to go tell Naaman to wash himself 7 times in one of the dirtiest rivers in the area. Go wash yourself. That's all Naaman gets. The commander of the Syrian army just shows up at your door and like, yeah, go tell him to go wash himself in the Jordan River 7 times. He'll be good. There's no, it's an honor to meet you. There's no, I've heard great things about you. All the normal things that Naaman would have heard. Naaman doesn't get those responses from Elisha. Nope. He's just told, go take a bath, you'll be fine. That's all Naaman gets. All that traveling, go clean yourself, you'll be all right. Just go take a bath. 7 of them. Welcome to Samaria. This is not exactly the response you would think he would get. He's not used to this kind of greeting. He's a man of high esteem. This is Naaman. Look at his response in verse 11. But Naaman became furious and went away and said, Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in rage. Naaman's ticked. He is not a happy man at all. I am the commander of the Syrian army. You honor me. Go tell him to wash himself. He'll be all right. That's what he gets. This is the message he gets. He thought Elisha would at least come out in person and wave his hands around and do some voodoo magic trick or something and get rid of the leprosy. But instead he just says, go do this. Just obey. Just obey God. Go wash yourself in the Jordan 7 times and you'll be fine. Naaman just wants to go back to Syria at this time, but his servants tell him that he should at least give it a try. What do you have to lose, Naaman? You're going to die anyway. You've got leprosy. There's no cure for leprosy. You're just going to die, so why not at least give it a try? Try. That makes sense to Naaman. I'm either way I'm going to die. Whether it works or whether it doesn't work, I'm still going to die. Or if it doesn't work, I'm going to die. If it works, that's great. But if it doesn't work, well, my situation's no different than it is right now. So I might as well give it a try. So Naaman obeys. And when he comes up out of the water for the 7th time, he realizes that he's healed. There's no more leprosy. He obeys the word of the Lord. He dips himself into the Jordan River 7 times. And on that 7th time, all 7, once he obeyed completely, he came up and realized that there was no more leprosy. He's completely healed. All he has to do now is go home. And that could have been the way the story ended. But it's not the way the story ends. Because Elisha didn't need to see Naaman again. He didn't say, go clean yourself and then come back and show me if it worked. He didn't say anything like that. Naaman could have just obeyed the Lord. He could have been cleansed of his leprosy, and then he could have just gone home. But the story doesn't end that way. His death sentence has just been removed. He now has his life back. He knew he was going to die, and now he doesn't know when he's going to die. He's healthy. He's good to go. Just a little while ago in the story, though, he was mad at the prophet of God. He was so mad at him. And God could have not blessed him because of the anger that he had towards Elisha. God could have said, forget it, I'm not going to bless you. But despite his attitude, God blessed him for obeying. Even though you see his heart, you say, yeah, I don't know about his heart. His heart wasn't in the right place. Fine, I'll do it. That doesn't seem like something God would want to honor. But he did get to the point where he says, okay, God, I will obey. I will get down in the dirtiest river in the area, and I will clean myself, and I will obey completely. And then when he's healed, he realizes there's something different going on in Israel. Now Naaman is filled with gratitude, and he wants to say thank you. That's where he's at. He says, I just want to say thanks. He could have gone home, but he decides to go back. Look at verse 15. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his aides, and came and stood before him. And he said, indeed, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant. But he said, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Naaman just wanted to show his appreciation for what the prophet had done for him. But Elisha understood the event on a deeper level than Naaman understood the event. Elisha didn't do anything, God did everything. Elisha understood that. Naaman wants to come back and say thank you. I want to give you gifts, Elisha. I want to give you something to say thanks. And Elisha says, no, I don't want it. You see, he didn't do anything at all. God did everything. Naaman was trying to show appreciation to the wrong person. And Elisha, good for him, he calls it. You don't owe me anything. I didn't do it. I told you what he said to do and you obeyed. That's why you're healed. It wasn't something I did. It was something he did. You're saying thank you to the wrong guy. I will not receive a gift from you. Naaman was a proud man serving a false god when the story began. Let's keep that in our minds. He was a very proud man, high esteem, and he was serving a false god. Now he's a humble man who wants to thank and worship the one true God. Things have changed for Naaman. He was a man sentenced to death, and now he's a man that has been given new life. That is an awesome picture of what happens to us at salvation. I was dead in my trespasses and sins, and then Jesus Christ came into my life and healed me 100%. I have a new life now. This is an awesome picture of what God has done for us. Naaman doesn't have any deep theological training. Remember, he's from Syria. They worship a false god. He comes to Samaria to see the prophet of the one true God. He is healed, and now he says, I will serve none other than the one true God. But he doesn't have deep theological training. He doesn't understand all there is about having a relationship with the true God. He doesn't understand this. He just wants to say thank you. Which you look at Naaman and say that he's a good man. He is a good man. By the way, I consider Naaman to be a giant of faith in the Bible. And I know a lot of times we don't look at him this way. I mean, I'm not washing in that river. Fine, I'll do it. Then he was healed and he says, okay, now I'll serve God. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of faith there. I'll do it because I have to. It doesn't seem to be a lot of faith there. But watch as his story unfolds here. He just wants to say thank you. But Elisha will not allow him to express thanks by giving him gifts. It wasn't me. It was God that did this. So Naaman thinks for a minute and he comes up with a way to show his gratitude. He thinks about it a little bit farther. He says, I know how to say thanks. I know how to say thanks. Look at verse 17. So Naaman said, then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth. For your servant will no longer offer either burnt offering or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. This is how Naaman ends his interaction with Elisha. He's asking him for dirt bags. That's where he's at. I want loads of earth. Elisha, take a gift from me. I want you to have a gift. I want to give this to you. As my way of saying thank you, please take my gift. And Elisha said, I will not do it. I will not accept your gift. Please take it. No. Then can I have dirt bags? Sure, that's just the natural progression of events in this story, right? That's exactly how we would think it would go down. Right? Yeah, I want dirt bags. Does that strike anybody else as odd? It seems like, okay, perfect. I want dirt bags. He wants to take 2 mule loads of dirt back to Syria with him. That's an unusual request. Can I have dirt bags? You want all my money, Elisha? No, I won't take any. You can have my money? No. Then can I have dirt? All right. Yeah, this is easy. That makes sense. Yeah, take the dirt bags. This is a wealthy and powerful man, and he's asking for dirt bags. When you read the Bible, ask questions. Ask questions. Don't walk into the Bible assuming that you know all the answers. Look for something you don't know and dig deeper. Dig. God doesn't put details in the Bible for us just to read past. He puts details in the Bible for us to dig deeper, to find out where He's going. He wants us to study. He wants us to learn. He wants you to dig deeper. So since we've got a lot of dirt here, let's dig. Let's look into why in the world Naaman wants these dirt bags. These are the things that make me go, when I'm reading the scriptures. Why in the world? Take my gifts. No, I won't. Please take them. No. Then I get dirt. All right, you can have dirt. Done. Story ends right there. Kind of ended abruptly, but that's where it ends. The commander of the Syrian army has just requested the gift of dirt. This is a well thought out. His reason for asking shows an incredible amount of courage and faith. This story goes deeper, and I want to dig deeper here. Look at verse 18 of 2 Kings chapter 5. Yet in this thing may the Lord pardon your servant. When my master goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow down in the temple of Rimmon. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord please pardon your servant in this thing. Naaman is going to have a problem when he gets home, and he knows it. He's not from Samaria. He's not an Israelite. He's a Gentile. He lives over in Syria. He's the commander of the Syrian army. He says, I've got a problem when I get home. The Syrian king did not experience what Naaman just experienced. He's going to go home to his master. He's going to go home to his king. The Syrian king still worships the pagan god Rimmon. When I get home, my king is still going to go into the temple of Rimmon, and he's still going to worship this false god. When Naaman gets back to Syria, he still has responsibilities to uphold. I still work for the king. I still have responsibilities. He still serves his king, but his king serves false gods. I've got a problem here. According to verse 18, it says that the king seems to need help as he bows, as he worships Rimmon. Remember, it said right there that when he leans on my hand to bow, the king apparently needs Naaman's help to bow and worship his king. I'm going to help him bow. I have to help him bow. I still have responsibilities. I need to help the king bow. Naaman said that when his master goes into the temple to worship, he has to lean on Naaman's hand. He has to lean on my hands in order to bow. This inevitably causes Naaman to bow with him. I've got to go down to the ground with you. I've got to bow too. Naaman is a man of faith that gets very little recognition in the Bible. He has just told Elisha his heart and his dilemma. I want to throw these two verses up, 17 and 18. Let's look at both of these verses. Your servant will no longer offer either burnt offering or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. Verse 18. When I bowed down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord please pardon your servant in this thing. Naaman has determined in his heart that he will serve no other God than the one true God. I realize that your God is the only God. Your God is the one true God. But I have a problem. People might mistake my actions of helping the king bow down in his personal act of worship. They might mistake that as my act of worship. And I do not want people to think that I am worshiping Rimmon. I don't want them to think this. Since he does not yet understand the true character of God, he also doesn't want God to misunderstand his actions either. Let your God know I'm not worshiping Rimmon. I don't want it to be misunderstood. I will not serve any other God than the one true God. But when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon to help my king, I don't want your God to misunderstand what I'm doing. I'm just doing my job. I'm not worshiping Rimmon. Please tell your God not to misunderstand. He doesn't understand our God. He doesn't understand. God's not going to mess this one up. He doesn't mess anything up. He's the one true God. So please, I don't want God to think that I'm worshiping Rimmon, because I'm not worshiping Rimmon. So he comes up with a plan to remove any misunderstanding. Dirtbags. Elisha, I want dirt. I want dirt. And then Elisha lets him take the dirt. Yeah, you can have dirt. Take it. I understand where you're coming from. Take the dirt. And Naaman's like, yes, I've got dirt bags. I'm going back to Syria with dirt bags. And that's not the people he's going back with. That's the bags of dirt he's going back with. I'm going back to Syria with dirt bags. I want to take you down a cultural and a scriptural road to help explain why this is so important to Naaman. I could just say, thanks for coming to Renew. You're dismissed. And right now we'd have a lot of questions. At least I hope you would. But I want to take you down this road and explain what's going on here. In Genesis chapter 10, we have one of the more boring chapters of the Bible. And I mean that with all reverence and respect. It is a boring chapter. You should read it sometimes. It's tough. It's a list of genealogies in the land that the people dwelt in. That's what the whole chapter is. There's not a whole lot of plot going on there. It's just a description. It's a list of people in the land that they live in. This is the list of the descendants of Noah, Noah's sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. This is their descendants. It first gives us the name of the descendants, and then it tells us what part of the world they ended up living in. I'm telling you, it's riveting reading. It's good stuff. This chapter includes all the people of the world at that time. Remember, we were down to one family with the flood. We're down to Noah and his family. Then it tells about his descendants. So this includes all the people of the world at that time, tells us who they are, and tells us where they ended up living. And after this long list, the chapter ends with this verse right here, Genesis 10, verse 32. These were the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, in their nation, and from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. If you read this chapter, you will see that 70 nations are listed. Israel is not one of them. All the people of the earth, every nation and all the people, where they're located on the earth, where they are, we get the list of 70 nations, but Israel is not mentioned. Israel is not one of the nations mentioned. God wanted a relationship with all mankind. He wanted a relationship with everybody on the earth, but people started worshiping false gods. They started worshiping gods that they created rather than the one true God. Every false god had a land where they worshiped. We get the list. These are the people. This is the land that they worship. This is where they are. All the people of the world. But the one true God was not being represented by any nation. There's not one nation that represented the one true God. The entire world had fallen into sin and idol worship, and they needed redemption. Chapter 10, the exclusion of Israel, tells you there's a problem. All the people of the world had their lands. And you see that they started worshiping false gods. But there was not one land, not one piece of ground, where the one true God was given honor and worshiped. That's not listed anywhere. There were a handful of people that still sought after God. So God began to build a nation with that handful of people. Abraham was the first. He was the first. Then there was Isaac, and then there was Jacob. Jacob's name was later changed to Israel. During a famine, if you follow that story, during a famine, Jacob's son Joseph, who was taken into or sold into captivity, Joseph made it possible for his family to be spared by moving them to Egypt. This is where their family line would remain for hundreds of years. They lived in Egypt. Joseph made it possible for the family to move to Egypt. Now this is where they're located. During that time, they became slaves in Egypt, so God sent Moses to deliver them. Following the story, we're just building up here. So God sends Moses in to deliver the children of Israel out of Egypt. And when God first speaks to Moses from the burning bush, he makes an unusual statement. Look at the statement in Exodus chapter 3 and verse 5. Then he said, "Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." The dirt Moses was standing on that day was no more holy than the dirt you walked in on today. Dirt's dirt. It's dirt. Dirt's not holy. So what's going on here? What's God doing? What's going on here? In the Eastern cultures, there was a cosmic turf war that had developed. My God versus your God. You will even see expressions like the God of the land mentioned often in the Bible. The God of the land. Remember after the Assyrians, they took Israel and then they went back to Israel to possess the land and the lions were attacking them. Say, hey, we need to make the God of the land happy. For some reason, the God of that turf, the God of that land over there is not happy with us, so send some of his people in here to teach us about the God of the land. Even though there was only one true God, the nations of the world declared false gods as the gods of their land. That's what's going on throughout the whole Bible. Through Abraham's line, God was setting apart his own people. The reason it was called holy ground is because it represented the presence of the one true God. It represented God's people. The dirt wasn't holy. God was holy. Like everybody else has their dirt. Everybody else has their turf, and their God is worshipped from their land, from their region. I'm getting my own turf. I'm building my own people. I'm bringing my own land. God was giving his people a promised land. It's still about the dirt. It's still about the land. It's not God sees dirt as valuable. That's not what it is. He says, I want my people to worship me also. I want a nation that represents me. I want to be declared also. Everybody else on the whole earth, they have their families and they have their regions. But I don't have a people that represent me. Abraham, I'm starting with you. Isaac, Jacob, Moses, deliver them. You're on holy ground. Holy ground. I'm going to take you into a promised land. You can represent me as my people. I will be your God and you will be my people. Let the whole world know there's one true God. I want you to represent me. When Naaman requested the dirt from Elisha's ground, he was making a statement far greater than even the nation of Israel was making at that time. They had fallen away from God. They have drifted. Naaman is making a huge statement when he says, I want to take your dirt with me. What he is saying is, I will worship no other than the one true God. When the people of Syria saw Naaman come home with all those dirt bags, they would have also known the significance of that. Naaman serves the one true God. He's bringing back holy ground. He is bringing back part of the land that worships that God. Let that message be spread out all throughout Syria. Naaman worships the one true God. When they saw him kneeling down to help the king as he worshipped the false god Naaman, as they saw that, they would now see it as just that. He's just helping him worship. Why? Because Naaman serves the God of Israel. How do you know? He brought the dirt from Israel back to Syria. He is making a cultural statement. This is the God of the land, the God of this land, the God of this land. I need to take your land back with me. Why? Because let them all know, I will serve no other than the one true God. This is a huge statement that Naaman's taken back to Syria. I want dirt bags. You won't let me say thank you by giving you gifts. So let me thank him by making a life change and letting the people of my culture know that I serve the one true God. I want the holy ground. Can I have the soil that represents your God? Can I have part of your land? And when they see me back in Syria, when they see me show up with all that dirt, like, where'd you get the dirt? I got it from the God of Israel. Are you not serving Naaman anymore? I only serve one God, one true God, the God of Israel. This is the soil I stand on. This is the dirt that represents the God of the land that I serve. I serve that God. The bags of dirt he brought back represented where he stood spiritually. And that culture understood that. Naaman isn't always seen as a hero of faith. We normally don't see that story as him taking a large stand for God. He's not always seen as a hero of faith, but he took a stand that would have been extremely difficult to take. Why in the world are your 2 mules loaded down with dirt? It represents my God. That's quite a statement. That's quite a statement. God knew the heart of this man. He knew the heart of Naaman. He also knew what he would do after he experienced the grace of God. Leprosy was a common disease in that day. So many people had leprosy. People carried this physical death sentence all the time. It happened commonly. But the heart of Naaman stood out to God. God saw what Naaman was doing. God loved the heart of Naaman. Naaman's name is brought up again in the New Testament, and he speaks highly of Naaman. Look at what it says in Luke chapter 4 and verse 27. And many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elisha the prophet, and none of them was cleaned except Naaman the Syrian. I will bless you. Why? Because I know your heart. I know your heart. God did not bring his name up again because he was healed. He brought his name up again because he accepted the God of Israel. I will serve no other God than the God of Israel. He wanted it to be known. He wanted to be known as a man that stood on holy ground. I'm different because I met God. Let everybody know I'm different because I met God. He made a change in my life. He revealed himself to me. I love the one true God. It's quite a statement to bring all that dirt back, Naaman. What are you going to do with that dirt? How's that dirt any different than this dirt? It's not, except for that dirt represents the God of the land. And that is where I stand spiritually, with the God of Israel. Naaman knew he was about to return to a land that rejected God. And he knew he was going to be viewed as different. He knew that. But he also knew what he knew. God is the one true God. God is good. He's so good. It's God who saves. It is God who gives mercy to the undeserving. It is God who loves us, even when we were rejecting him and serving other things before we met him. It's one true God. I know what I know. He is the one true God. Naaman wanted to take dirt back with him as a testimony of where he stood. I got a question for you. Do the people in your life know where you stand? Do they know where you stand? Naaman took a huge, huge step of faith. I'm going to take a testimony back with me to a pagan nation that I serve that God, not their false gods. Where do the people in your life think you stand? Where do they think you stand? Naaman was known as a servant of Naaman before he met God. He worshiped in the temple with his king. But when he returned home, there was no question of who he was after he met God, the one true God. There's no question of where Naaman stood. In our daily lives, we're surrounded by people who don't know the one true God. Understand that we live in this world. People all around us all the time. When you go to work, you are surrounded by people who have not met Jesus Christ. They have not met the one true God. They don't have a relationship with God. But do they know that you represent the one true God? Do they know that about you? Do they know that you operate differently because of your love for him? When they see how you act, do they understand that you act differently because of him? Do the people you are surrounded by from day to day know where you stand? Or do they think you stand on the same turf they're on because they don't see much of a difference? You worship this God too, don't you? Oh no, I worship the one true God. I don't see it. I don't see it. They knew where Naaman stood. There was no question. You don't come home with 2 mules loaded down with dirt, of all things, and not create questions. Why the dirt? Because of the God, the one true God. God's temple is built on a different kind of turf. He's represented by a different kind of people. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 16. And what agreement has the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will dwell in them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says the Lord. I will have a people also. I will be the God of a land. What land? The heart. God's temple is not on a piece of dirt. It's within His people. He's worshipped in spirit and truth, not on a mountain or in a city with a temple. It's not about the place. It's about the heart. It's about my people. I will be their God, and they will be my people. The whole world has their people and has their gods. I will set up my people, and I will be their God. Started with Abraham and came all the way down to this day right here. He still has people. We are His people. You are on God's turf everywhere you go. But do the people you are surrounded by from day to day know where you stand spiritually? Or do they just assume that you stand on the same turf they stand on? You've got to ask yourself that question. I don't know that answer. How do other people see you? Naaman took a courageous stand. What a huge statement he made. He could have been killed for his commitment to God. He went back to a pagan land. He could have been killed for that, but he didn't care. I'll die, but they'll at least know where I stood when I died. He's making a huge statement, but he had the determination in his heart which made him stand out, even to God. Yeah, I'll heal him. I'll heal that guy. Of all the lepers in Israel during the days of Elisha, not one of them was healed, except for Naaman the leper. Why? Because he had a different kind of leprosy? No, because he had a different kind of heart. God saw it like, I need you. And I don't just want to heal you and let the story be over. Get some dirt bags. Let's go back to Syria. Get some dirt bags. Let's take it back. Let's go back with the dirt bags. Naaman was determined that God would be his God and that he would be one of God's people. He made the statement very clear. I will serve no other God than the one true God. Then he made sure his actions displayed that commitment. Let the rest of the world know I stand on holy ground because of a holy God. Living for God does not come naturally. Even after we're saved, it can be difficult. We're programmed differently. We're programmed to do things the old way before we were saved. Yeah, you're saved. You're a new creation. You're new. You're clean. You're no longer considered sinner. You are saint. God took you from one category and moved you to another category. Then why do we act like people we're not? Why do we behave in a way that doesn't represent God? Because we're programmed this way. Well, you know what God says to do about that? Romans 12:2. It's the verse that our whole church was started on. Renew your mind. Renew your mind. Don't be conformed to the world. Renew your mind. Renew your mind. Don't do it like you were programmed to do it. Do it out of obedience and love for God. Renew your mind. Sin appeals to our flesh and knows that we're weak. It's not a secret. We are weak. We are extremely weak. Naaman took a very difficult stand which set him apart from everyone else. But to this day, he is known for the impact that he made. God even brought him up centuries later. Yeah, Naaman. I remember Naaman. What does the impact you're making for God look like? Ask yourself that. You got to ask yourself. The impact that I'm making on this world for God, what does that look like? Or am I really making an impact at all? You've got to ask yourself that question. Maybe it's time for you to show the world the ground your life has been built on through Jesus Christ. I stand on holy ground. It's not the dirt either. It's God. It's my God. Look at 1 Peter 1:16. And here's the reason. Because it is written, "Be holy, for I am holy. I will be your God. You will be my people." He came and represented us, and all he asks us to do is represent him. Let's be a people. Let's be a people. Have a relationship with him. Maybe it's time to draw some lines in the sand. I don't know where you stand right now. I don't know where you stand in life. I don't know what the people you go to work see. I don't know what they see out of your life. I don't know what's going on there, but maybe it's time to draw some lines in the sand. Maybe that's where you need to be. I need to draw a line in the sand. It's time to make some commitments. I need to start doing things differently. Maybe it's time to display some dirt bags. Maybe. I don't know your life. I don't know what you deal with from day to day, but maybe it's time to say, I'm coming into work tomorrow with loads of dirt bags. Let them all know where I stand spiritually. I serve the one true God. He is my God, and I am one of his people. Let the world know this is the stand. I'm proud to be different and take a stand for Christ. I'm proud to be set apart. I'm proud to look odd. I'm proud to stand with the one true God. Naaman's statement was incredible. And for so many years of my life, I looked at that passage and I'm like, why in the world did Naaman need dirt bags? And I just read over it and kept going. I don't know. Well, then God taught me to dig deeper. I love digging deeper. And when you see what God was doing throughout the whole Old Testament, I will make myself a people. I will give them a promised land. By the way, what was the thing that Abraham inherited? If you look in the New Testament, it doesn't say just a piece of ground. It says the earth. Jesus Christ is coming back. And the earth is his possession. This is his land. We are his people. Let the world know the dirt you stand on is holy ground. Let them know that you're different. Tomorrow at work, go and please God with your actions. On Tuesday, when you vote in a way that's pleasing to God with your actions. When you wake up on Wednesday, no matter who the future president's going to be, pray for that man. Pray for that man and let God be pleased with your actions. No matter what happens in this world we live in, you are a representation of him. So everywhere you go with dirt bags. Go with dirt bags. And don't think of anybody when I say that. That would be wrong. Carry a testimony with you everywhere you go so that when people look at your life, they say that person's different. That person stands on holy ground.